Great to see so many familiar faces. Great to see so many new faces. Happy Easter. Happy Easter. Or as I like to say, enjoy the celebration of return of the spring. It's a little non-secular, anyway. So I want to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm out of here. Who's my replacement? I can't count that high. We're going to start over. I'll ring the bell if you like. Anyway, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. My name is Ray Knutson, and I'm very pleased to be your worship leader today. This is the time in the service where the worship leader always says, one thing I love about this church is, and then they say very interesting things that I always enjoy. So, wanting to be conscientious, I just started writing down a few things that I really love about this church. And a few more. And then a few more. Until my list grew really long. And I realized, I can't talk about all these things. And I'm really having a hard time selecting or choosing the one that would be the one I love the most. What am I going to do? And then I saw a common theme amongst all of these. And that theme is acceptance. Acceptance of other people's beliefs. Acceptance of various living arrangements. Acceptance of different points of view. Acceptance of pretty much everything except something that's intentionally harmful to others. We don't accept that. And then, while I was still thinking about it, I recalled a piece of needlework, artwork, that one of my wife's Quaker forebears had created a long time ago. In fact, well over 100 years ago. It's been on our wall for years and has often been very meaningful to me. And I realized it already said everything I wanted to say. So, rather than trying to come up with something profound of my own, I just want to share this message with you. And Bob, if you'll put the slide up now. Is it up already? Great. And for those of you that like show and tell, this is the actual thing, which is about, my wife tells me, about 125 years old. I can relate to that. And again, it's obviously a photograph of this artwork. The picture and the words are a bit quaint and outdated and somewhat hard to read, although it looks like Bob did a nice job, or possibly the minister, improving it. So again, it is a bit quaint and outdated, some of the pictures, some of the words, but I think you'll get the message as I read it. So many gods, so many creeds, so many paths that wind and wind, when just the art of being kind is all this old world needs. Now, we need it now. Again, these words were written about in 1900. Just think about what was going on in 1900. It was a terrible time. We're having a lot of trouble now. They were having a lot of trouble then. In closing, let me just read it one more time. So many gods, so many creeds, so many paths that wind and wind, when just the art of being kind is what this old world needs. Thank you. The first thing I want to announce is Jack Doggett in the room? I'm sure you are somewhere. Okay, we're not going to go to you. Come on up, Jack.
Thanks, Ray.
Sure.
Along with Charmin Drockstar, I've had the privilege of co-chairing the Pledge Drive this year. We've been the mechanics through all the speeches and all the letters and emails that you've received. And I'm up here to tell you that after the month of March, we are over 90% of our goal. And that goal was set at 10% higher than last year because this board has, over the last few years, has taken an attitude of abundance, that we were not going to constrain and constrict ourselves because of the pandemic. And now as we look ahead to grow our future, their vision has been answered by you all, and I really, really appreciate it. This is the ultimate act, as David has talked before, that we co-create in this congregation. And here we are. This is one of the, as I was thinking, I can't think of many other exercises or activities in this congregation where we all participate. We all must participate. And so this to me is the ultimate act of co-creation. And I so appreciate it. I've watched the details of this. I want to acknowledge the pledge stewards have also been communicating with you all. Could the pledge stewards raise their hands here that are here today? Thank you so much for your effort. And so as the last thing, I want to ask you to participate in thanking one another, whether it's for having made a pledge, which many of us have done, or the ones who are going to hand me their pledge card today, which several already have, thank you very much, or for just being here. You're new to us, and you haven't yet gotten to the place where you're participating in our annual pledge drive. Let's all take a moment and thank one another for all this co-creation.
At this time, I'd like to welcome those joining us online. We're delighted you're here. This congregation is all of us together, in person and online. If you're a new online visitor, you'll find a link in the visitor format, and we'd appreciate having you fill that out. I have one announcement to share from our membership and connection team. We're in the process of updating our internal photo directory. In coffee hour today, members of that team will be in coffee hour after the service asking to take your photos for the directory. Excuse me. And I have a call for art submissions. See the printout that Reverend David has said about this already. And that would be it. Thank you.
Friends, our art gallery up across the hall and around the corner is getting ready for its second show. If you are an artist in any way, shape, or form, at the 9 o'clock service with all these kids, I told them, all right, kids, you know that you are all artists, but not all of the adults remember that anymore. So take a look in the weekly messenger for the info on how to submit. I have one other piece of business. I feel like there's a lot of business starting the service off, but I do have one other piece of business before we get into it. You know that this is an election year, and churches don't endorse candidates, and we're not going to now or in the months ahead. But we do, and I do, enthusiastically encourage y'all to vote your values. I talked with someone from our climate action team this week who said that he's going to get to work turning out climate voters this year because voting is one of the most important pieces of slowing climate change. Out Boulder has an invitation for us to do the same kind of thing, election work rooted in values. The goal is to help establish a base of LGBTQ+ supportive voters and make sure that they actually vote. And the method is deep canvassing. Trained volunteers go out in pairs, knocking on doors, not just to have sort of shallow invitations to vote, but for in-depth conversations with strangers rooted in deep listening to their concerns and a conversation about values. I lived in Minnesota in 2012, and when I was there, this strategy played a crucial role in defeating an anti-marriage equality amendment. I saw firsthand how deep canvassing played a role in changing not just the politics, but the whole conversation in that state. There are groups at work right now in Colorado trying to place anti-trans measures on Colorado's ballot this November, and we want to be ready in case they manage to get the measures on the ballot. Doing this deep canvassing is not a small commitment. There's a virtual training and then an all-day training for the whole weekend at the end of this month. And then after the training, you stay involved for the whole remainder of the year through election and meet and canvass in the context of a mutually supportive team. This is not a small ask, and this is not the right thing for everyone in the room. But if it is for you, I got a sign-up sheet, and Izzy Clinton is going to have this sign-up sheet after the service, and they're going to be there doing part with the training and the canvassing, and we've got one other person signed up already, and I want to invite you to be a part of this work. All right. You want to get to it? Okay, a long time ago, I heard another Unitarian minister tell the story, relate his experience that every time he preached from Christian scripture, because I do that sometimes, but not all the time, there was this one member of the congregation who would give him feedback every time on how uncomfortable it was to hear Jesus mentioned in his sermons. I say this in part because you're going to get a lot of Jesus today. But the real punchline is this. After years of this, she meets with him and she says, with surprise and with grief, she says, I finally realized it wasn't Jesus I hated. He was radical, and his message of love is pretty cool, actually. I hated that my aunt shoved Jesus down my throat for my whole childhood. In this present age of rising Christian nationalism, where Jesus is white and militant and wants to make America great again, and you can buy his branded Bibles for $59.99, I have a different story to tell you. Like Unitarians and Universalists have been doing for centuries, we are gathered to remember what that man did before he died, not to speculate about what came after. And we don't retell this gospel story for the historical account that it provides, but for the heart story that it describes. Because we've lived that same kind of story too. The old story says that Jesus spent his whole ministry making a community of radical inclusion and hospitality and welcome real, in fact, among people in this world. And in the end, the teacher goes up to Jerusalem knowing he'll be betrayed and killed, and goes anyway, joyful and hopeful and beautiful and undeceived. He goes to share the good news, which is an invitation into this life. And how different it can be when love is the thing at the center of it, when compassion is the thread that you follow through the maze of the world. The whole of his work, all the way to the end, was joyful and heartbroken. And we retell that story here in this house to each other. Christians, some, but mostly not. Atheists and Buddhists and mystics and humanists and religious naturalists. We retell this story every Easter, not because we're interested in the religion about Jesus, but because we're trying to do the same thing he invited his people into, to live open-eyed and broken-hearted and deeply in love with a hurting world as it is, as it can become, as we can become. I'm not, on Easter, really ever interested in the fact of the resurrection. I don't believe in the fact of the resurrection, but I know what the truth of resurrection looks like. I know it firsthand in my own living. I've seen it in others. I've heard your stories, too, of what it is to come back to life again. From grief, from loss, from addiction, from hopelessness, to find a way through that narrow living that squeezes the breath out of you. We retell the myth because it's not about something that never happened, it's about something happening over and over and over. M.J. Kaiser writes this, explains Easter, points the way to what that all means. They write, "Keep your proclamations of grandeur. Give me Easter, small as a seed, one that can be planted while it's still cold outside, one that can be watered with tears and demands time and patience to grow. I don't know how large it will become, how long until it blossoms, or even if it will be pretty. I only want it to grow roots that dig deep down, striving for life in the underbelly of the world. Spare me the cosmic promises of otherworldly escape and point me to the sacred possibilities within reach. Tell me again how the nutrients born from decay keep even the saddest places brimming with potential for life. This is our work. Covenant is an old-fashioned word for a promise. This Unitarian Universalism is a covenantal religion. We're not kept in line by the authority of the minister or the denomination or elders or creed. We make promises to each other about how we want to be in the world and be in community. So will you rise in body or in spirit to join in this covenant? Join hands if you like, or put a hand on your chest if you'd rather not. And join in our covenant together. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it. We'll remain standing as we join together in song.
Our opening hymn this morning is number 298, if you are a music reader and like to follow along in the hymnal. If not, welcome to the lyrics.
Keep with the work of
This is our chalice lighting time. The chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. And to light it is to remember that we are part of a much larger whole. Each Sunday, we join with more than 1,000 other UU churches and fellowships across the country in repeating this ritual. I'd now like to invite Nicole Ball to light this morning's chalice. Nicole?
Hello, my name is Nicole Ball. I'm currently serving on the UUC Board of Trustees, and as we wrap up our pledge drive, I want to share what this community means to me and why my family is proud to pledge at the visionary level. I joined UUCB in 2015 with my family, and while trying to prepare this chalice lighting and looking for the date that we joined the church, I scrolled through all 1,504 emails that I've received in connection with UUCB since then. You know, it was almost like looking through a photo album. I was reminded of the many ways this community has enriched my life and the lives of my family members and the work that our community has done in the hopes of making the world a better and more loving place. I was reminded, of course, of Sunday services like this one that opened my heart to concerns wider than myself and remind me to notice and appreciate the beauty and wonder in the world and to notice with compassion the hard and sad things. I was reminded of the ways we've supported our wider community, the work we've done for immigration justice by supporting Ingrid and her family, and the work with teepee raisers. I saw pictures of my kids at Pride Fest in Boulder a few years back and was reminded that we UUCBers get out into the world to stand on the side of love. Some of the first emails I received from UUCB were invitations to the Wine and Spirits group, the spiritual social group for 20-something to 40-something folks, where my husband and I made friends and had some great conversations that challenged me to open up on an emotional level. And more recently, we've been connecting intergenerationally at the monthly community nights. All this is to say that UUCB has been a big part of my life for the past 9 years, and I am so grateful that I've been able to receive the love and support of this community while also having the opportunity to be useful, to make a difference, and to take a stand. Looking ahead, I think this is an exciting time to be part of UUCB. The physical renewal of our building is one exciting project on the horizon, but the growing children's program and an opportunity to live our values by compensating our staff fairly are already happening. For all these reasons, I'm happy to support this community with a generous financial pledge. If you're in a place where you can give monetarily, and it sounds like most of you have already made your pledges, but if you haven't, I hope you give generously. If you're not, it's okay. I hope we can be there for you as much as you've all been there for me and my family over the years. So I light this chalice in anticipation of a growing and exciting future together.
Moving into a spirit of prayer and meditation, it's not just a spirit, a sense of feeling of solemnity or seriousness. It's a space also to practice joyfulness. I hold that sense especially today. March 31st each year is Trans Day of Visibility, a day to see and love and celebrate the trans people in our lives as gloriously perfect, exactly as you are. Not as people to be tolerated or accommodated, but to be celebrated, to be joyful with. Part of the work of spiritual practice is growing our own sense of our capabilities, of what's possible. We try, we practice. There's a work, there's an effort to join in celebration, and the same to join in the grief of another. And the practice is to do all of that all the time. My friend, the Reverend Sarah Lawal, is a progressive faith leader, the mother of a trans teenager. She serves the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Idaho. She and that congregation have worked so hard to protect trans rights in that state and are heartbroken and devastated to have those rights stripped away. And she writes this called A Blessing for Transformation. And I invite you into it, to join in it, to see it in yourself and in each other. A spark inside you has been burning. That inner knowing, whispering, waiting for the moment when you knew you moving through this life with more clarity, more joy, more assuredness in you. Inviting your beloveds into your inner heart to accompany you, support you, love you in your quest to be just you. Until the right time arrived to cross another threshold in your transformation, and now your body aligns with your soul and it sings more loudly, more brightly, more expressively, more of you revealed, and we sing with you. Champions of your courage, blessing the path unfolding before you, with freedom unbound, marveling at that spark, that divine spark that shines even brighter in you. Let your heart lead you in gratitude for you, for all you've embraced and the life that embraces you, for you are and have always been the blessing unfolding, transformed and transforming, whole and holy, whole and holy, whole and holy. We'll be together in silence for a few moments. Amen. When we say that our mission is in part to always love, we mean that we actively seek connection across boundaries and borders. And so each week in the service, you're invited to come forward, to take a stone to symbolize your sorrows and your joys, and then to place it in the earth in the company of everybody else. This is a private act and a personal act. You place that stone in symbol of something only known to you, your private joy or grief. And it is a community act. What we make together is a whole, this miniature landscape of our inner individual lives. What we make is a whole, each of us unique and united. This week, we especially hold in love Janet Salmons, whose brother died unexpectedly last week. And we celebrate with Babs Hurley, who enjoyed a wonderful week with her 103-year-old mother, June. And we grieve with Kim Kaputska, who writes, "My little sister has multiple myeloma, is having a very rough time in treatment." For all of our hopes and all of our griefs, we hold this compassionate space with love. And for those of us in person, I invite you to come forward as you feel moved, starting with the back of the room and the choir, and then the front.
that you choose to show. We're always there for you. So I want you to know I am sending you light to hold you, to heal you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to hold you, to heal you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I'll walk the path with you. Go slow, dear one, don't hurry. I'll go just like you need to go. There is no need to worry, 'cause I am sending you light to hold you, to heal you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to hold you, to heal you. I am sending you light to hold you in love.
Somewhere far from nowhere, I grew both strong and tall, longing to become, but knowing not the path at all. Not the footprints of the winter, melted into fields of spring. One last embrace before I crossed the
the scholar of Christianity, Bart Ehrman, writes that the early Christians, the followers of Jesus in those first few centuries, before creeds, before becoming the official religion of empire, before the church with a capital C, the early Christians had three defining characteristics under Roman government. They were antisocial, sacrilegious, and dangerous. This is what I'm going to propose we be, too. He says this: they were antisocial in that they did not participate in the normal, there should be scare quotes around that, in the normal social life of their community. They were sacrilegious in that they refused to worship the Roman gods, and they were dangerous in that the gods did not take kindly to communities who failed to offer them their cult. In other words, they were a threat to the established order just by existing. They were antisocial. Those early Christians refused to be entertained and amused and soothed into avoidance or denial or neglect of the reality of life under empire, which in the Roman Empire, like this country now, was an explicit and implicit policy of the state that some lives count more than other lives, that citizens were more important than non-citizens, that men were more important than women, the rich more important than the poor. And the early church was antisocial because they refused to acknowledge there was any rank you could achieve higher than regular person, and we'd all already achieved it. They gathered together as this mixed multitude, Jews and Gentiles, rich and poor, citizens, immigrants, a spectrum of genders, refugees, the occupied, former prisoners, sex workers. Everyone counted, and everyone matters, and everyone was invited in. And if that does not sound like the sort of Christianity you were raised with or hear about, first, yeah. And second, I have so many citations to give you. When the early Christians took the cross as their central symbol, it was also a reminder that a man who preaches love and nonviolence can be killed whenever the state decides to kill him. It was facing the reality that power can do what it wants. Let me say that more sharply, though. The fact of the crucifixion, the central story for the early Christians on which we sort of rarely dwell, crucifixion was a standard tactic for execution. It was unremarkable. It was every day. To we modern people who use euphemisms like lethal injection when the state murders someone, we need sharper language for this. We need to make the cross and crucifixion as brutal as it would have been to them. Clarence Jordan, who tried to model his life on early Christian community, founded a multiracial farm and religious community in southwest Georgia in 1942. In southwest Georgia in 1942, a multiracial farm and religious community. And he did a translation of the New Testament into vernacular Georgian parlance. And he says about how he translates crucifixion, he says, there isn't any word in our vocabulary which adequately translates the Greek for crucifixion. Our crosses, he says this as a Christian, he says, our crosses are so shined, so polished, so respectable that to be impaled on one of them would seem to be a blessed experience. He says, we've emptied the term crucifixion of its original content of terrific emotion, of violence, of indignity and stigma, of defeat. And he says, explaining his translation, he says, I have translated crucifixion as lynching. Well aware this is not technically correct. Jesus was officially tried and legally condemned, elements generally lacking in a lynching, but having observed the operation of justice, and at times having been its victim, I can testify that more people have been lynched by judicial action than by unofficial ropes. When the early Christians made the cross their symbol, it was also an unavoidable reminder of a profoundly disgusting injustice on which the whole social order of their country relied. They made it unavoidable. The cross required them to be antisocial. It required them to be maladjusted to a society which had adjusted itself to cruelty and inhumanity. They could live within that world, but they had to place themselves outside it at the same time. Taking the cross as a symbol for them was an inescapable reminder that they had committed themselves to be sacrilegious to the great gods of the status quo. Those gods that each of us worship unthinking. Emerson said, a person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our heart, but it will come out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives, our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming. Who is that pantheon of gods today? I mean, there is the God of self-righteousness, who loves your anger most of all, who tells you it's okay for you to hate. You have the right kind of hate. There's the God of self-interest who pretends to be freedom and says that if you just satisfy all of your desires, everyone will win in the process. There's some hand-waving about how that works. There's the God of just a little bit more, just a little more. If there was just a little more money or time or friends, or if there was a little more, you would work your way to happiness, buy your way there, show your way off there. There's the God of self-made salvation, my friend Erica calls it, who says each of us are rugged individuals. We got to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Stop asking for help. Stop telling anyone how you actually feel. These gods are subtle and glamorous, and I know them so well. I preach this stuff because I need to hear it too. To take the harder path that those early Christians offered, inviting us into sacrilege, into a holy disobedience to the gods of this time and place. A friend put it this way. He said, we are here to guard against that great lie which our culture relentlessly feeds us, that the purpose and meaning of human life is to be happy. It is a seemingly innocent lie fed by people who would profit by that innocence. But our purpose is to overcome the muggy, mindless haze of everyday life, to develop a sensitivity to the reality of other people with their sorrows and their struggles, to cultivate a spiritual maturity that will confront and deeply engage suffering and death. And only then, only doing that work, can we actually give ourselves over to the laughter and the joy and pause in the face of the nearly imperceptible radiance of the ordinary, and partner together in community to paint our little corner of the world more beautiful. Like those early Christians, be antisocial to every bit of culture that tries to crush your soul, to every bit that will deny the existence of anything possible other than the way things are right now. Be sacrilegious to the gods of the status quo, and it will make you dangerous. Our early ancestors feared being socialized to an unjust social order. They feared worshiping the gods of the status quo. They feared instead of being dangerous to the world around them, they would live in quiet anonymity, quiet desperation. Without miracle, without divinity, without legend, the Easter story is not a comfort but a commission that love can have the final word if we are love's hands. That no power in the world, not even death, can stop a beloved community of resistance. And that the only answer, the only real answer, the only one that lasts, the only answer to the inevitable reality of suffering and death and the inescapable fact of power wed to violence is an Easter small as a seed, planted in the cold, watered with tears, that brings the potential for life, for wholeness, for humanness. And the table will be wide, writes the poet Jan Richardson. The table will be wide, and the welcome will be wide, she says, describing this thing that's growing. And the arms will be wide open to gather us in, and our hearts will be wide open to receive. And we come as children who trust there is enough, unhindered and free, and our aching will be met with bread and our sorrow with wine. And we will open our hands to the feast without shame and turn toward each other without fear. And we will give up our appetite for despair. And we will taste and know of delight, and we will become bread for a hungering world, and we will become drink for those who thirst. And the blessed will become the blessing, and everywhere will be the feast. Amen.
Will you rise in body or spirit and join in singing number 1052, The Oneness of Everything? I took a gamble on you this morning. I know this is not a well-known hymn, but the words are so beautiful. I hope that you will find it worth it.
Far beyond the grasp of hands, or light to meet the eye, past the reaches of the mind. There find the King.
New songs. That was great. Thank you. We've been splitting our offering this month with Planned Parenthood of Rocky Mountains. For decades, Unitarian Universalists have affirmed that every person has the right to determine if, when, and how they want to have children. Planned Parenthood is one of the nation's leading providers of high-quality, affordable health care and the nation's largest provider of sex education. After the Supreme Court declared there was no right to reproductive freedom nearly 2 years ago, Planned Parenthood's work has been more important and in more need than ever before. I invite you to give generously as you are able. For those of you online, you can use the QR code or find a link in our video description. For those gathered in person, you can also scan the QR code or make a donation as the ushers now pass the baskets. Thank you.
We searched in the gloom, you couldn't see me, I couldn't see you, a heavy darkness filled the room.
No, I couldn't see you, but still I knew that you were there, and you felt me too. Your song isn't mine, and mine isn't yours. We go to each other across miles, across time. The things I was taught to love and to play keep us apart. They keep me from loving you. So come meet me here in this patch of light. We'll build a new song without hate, without fear. Come, let us try. Come, let us be a patch of light for the aching world. And let our song forever be a patch of light for all to see. Oh, a patch of light. Oh, a patch of light. Now here between us, right here where we stand, a patch of light grows, darkness cannot touch. Come meet me here in this patch of light. We'll build a new song without hate, without fear. Come, let us try. Come, let us be a patch of light for the aching world. And let our song forever be a patch of light for all to see. Song forever be a patch of light. A patch of light for all to see. Come meet me here in this patch of light. We'll build a new song
if it is to bend towards justice, only hands are going to do that bending. No one's coming or coming back to save us. That's our work to do, to bless the world. Go bless the world. Be antisocial and sacrilegious and dangerous.
Amen.
Let's sing our way out. Will you rise and body your spirit?